I had taken a short break from work, just a long weekend alone in a quiet mountain rental cabin. It was early spring, and even though the weather app had warned of heavy rain, I didn't think much of it. I arrived on a Friday morning, unpacked, made coffee, and spent most of the day reading and enjoying the silence. By 4 p.m., the sky had turned a murky grey, and a constant drizzle began to tap against the windows. The cabin sat tucked between pine trees, with no neighbors in sight, exactly what I thought I needed. Around 5:30, the rain picked up hard. I made some soup, dimmed the lights, and decided to lean into the stormy vibes by watching a horror movie on my laptop. It felt cozy at first, the kind of eerie comfort you find in isolation when you know you're safe. Or at least, when you think you are. By the time the movie ended, it was nearly 7. Outside, the storm had turned violent. Lightning lit up the forest, and thunder cracked so loud it rattled the kitchen glasses. I got up to stretch, grabbed my water bottle, and turned toward the hallway that led to the bathroom. Just as I took a step, something flickered in the corner of my eye, a shadow that moved across the hallway wall. I froze. It was fast, too fast to fully register. I told myself it was probably just a trick of the light from the storm, but something about it felt intentional, like it was reacting to me. I walked cautiously to the hallway and peeked around the corner. Empty. Still, my pulse didn't slow down. I hadn't realized how quiet it had gotten. Even the storm seemed muffled now. I forced a deep breath, filled my water, and peeked out the window. Rain was coming down in sheets, the forest beyond swallowed in blackness. The nearest road was probably already flooding. Back on the couch, I tried to shake the feeling by watching random YouTube videos. I couldn't focus. I kept checking over my shoulder, glancing at the hallway again and again. Then, it happened again. Another flicker of movement, this time behind the TV. It looked like someone peeking out for just a second, then vanishing. I spun around, but of course nothing. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked toward the wall, scanning every corner, every window. No footprints, no open door, no sign of anyone. But that didn't ease me. I had never hallucinated, never had anxiety or sleep issues. So why did I suddenly feel like my brain was fighting against something invisible? I waited 15 minutes, lights on now, trying to logic my way out of the fear. Eventually, I told myself a hot shower would help. I went upstairs to the bathroom and turned on the water, the sound of it muffling the wind outside. I closed my eyes and let the warmth run over me. Slowly, the tension started to unwind. Then, a massive thud. It was deep, jarring, like something had slammed into the walls of the cabin. The entire floor beneath me vibrated. I jumped, slipping slightly on the wet tile, and immediately shut off the water. Silence. Not even wind. Not even rain. Just total, pressing silence that rang in my ears. I wrapped myself in a towel, heart hammering, and cracked the bathroom door. Nothing. I quickly dressed and tiptoed downstairs, scanning every inch of the open space as I moved. In the kitchen, the back door was ajar, barely hanging on its top hinge. The bottom 2 hinges had been completely ripped out of the frame. Wood splinters covered the floor beneath it. I backed away slowly. My breath was shallow, my hands shaking as I grabbed my phone and sprinted back upstairs. I locked myself in the upstairs bathroom, whispering my location to the 911 dispatcher. I kept hearing tiny creaks and soft thuds while I waited. It felt like someone was still in the house. I stayed pressed against the far wall, clutching the phone like it could protect me. When the police finally arrived, they swept the place. No one was inside. But what the officer told me next turned my stomach cold. The door hadn't been broken in from outside. It had been blown outward, as if someone had slammed it open from inside the cabin with such force, it tore off the hinges. So, whoever I saw, whoever cast those shadows, they had been in there the entire time, watching me, moving when I wasn't looking. The officer said it might have been someone squatting in the cabin before I arrived. But that didn't explain why they didn't leave, why they waited, or why they left with so much anger that they tore the door out on their way out. Last winter, during a relentless snowstorm in early January, I stayed alone in my small off-campus apartment near my university. I was 22, midway through my senior year, and classes had gone remote due to the blizzard. The roads were buried under almost a foot of snow, and no one was really leaving their homes. It was supposed to be a peaceful week indoors, but instead, it became the most terrifying stretch of days I've ever lived through. My apartment was a compact one-bedroom unit on the ground floor of a quiet, outdated building tucked behind the school library. It had creaky floors, paper-thin walls, and only 2 large windows, one in the living room and one in my bedroom. I worked from a little desk by the bedroom window, the same place I did my online classes. That particular Tuesday, I had brewed some coffee, pulled on a hoodie, and sat at my desk from morning until 8 p.m, typing away for an assignment due Friday. Outside, the wind howled and the snow fell hard all day. I barely moved except to stretch, eat, and bring the trash out. It was dark by the time I bundled up and stepped outside to drag the trash bin to the sidewalk. That's when I noticed something strange. The snow to the left side of my apartment looked disturbed. Everywhere else, the snow was smooth and undisturbed, but on that side, just beneath my bedroom window, it looked trampled. I stepped off the walkway and walked toward the odd patch. My boots crunched the untouched snow until I reached it. And there they were, a clear line of shoe prints, pressing deep into the snow, curving along the side of the building. The prints were fresh, deep, defined, and leading directly to the wall under my window. I followed them until they stopped abruptly, like whoever it was had just stood there for a long time before turning back the way they came. Or maybe, before vanishing, I stood frozen. That window, that exact spot, was where I'd been sitting all day. The blinds had been shut, but the slats weren't perfect. You could still peek through them if you stood close. Had someone been standing there? Watching me? For how long? I went back inside and locked the door, heart thudding. I sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, but I couldn't shake the image of those prints of someone standing out in that brutal, cold, silent and still, right outside my room. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe a maintenance worker walked through earlier and I just hadn't noticed. Maybe a neighbor's kid taking a shortcut. I didn't want to sound paranoid. Eventually, I went to bed around 11, after checking the window one last time. The snow had already begun to cover the tracks. There were no new ones. Still, I locked the window and triple-checked it before crawling under the covers. When I woke up the next morning, I went straight to the window. My stomach dropped. There were fresh prints again, in the exact same place, leading up to the same spot beneath the window. I bolted for my jacket and boots and ran outside. The prints were almost identical to the night before, deep, firm, pacing in the snow directly beneath my bedroom window. But this time, the tracks hadn't returned the way they came. They just ended there, like the person had never left. I scanned the area. Not a single other footprint in the snow-covered lot. No tire marks. No signs of movement. Just mine and theirs. I ran back inside, hands shaking. I didn't know what to do. I felt stupid calling 911 when technically nothing had happened. But the sense of being watched, the feeling of someone getting close enough to see me, but not make a sound, it was unbearable. I called the non-emergency police number just to have it on record. The dispatcher was calm, but firm. Keep everything locked. Let us know if you see anything else. That was all. I tried to continue my workday, but I kept glancing at the window, expecting a shadow, a face, anything. As the day passed, the snow began to fill in the tracks once more, like nothing had ever happened, but I couldn't focus. I felt exposed, unsafe even inside my own home. That night, after logging off around 8, I went to the window to check again. At first, I felt relief. The snow outside looked untouched, smooth, flat. But then I looked down. The latch on the window was undone. I stared at it, unblinking. I hadn't touched it since the night before. I had locked it. I knew I had. Yet now, it slid open with no resistance. Someone had unlocked it. From the outside, during the night, I backed away slowly, the weight of the realization crushing me. They had returned. They had gotten close enough to mess with the window. Had they been inside? I grabbed my keys, threw on my boots, and rushed out to my car, not even grabbing a coat. I dialed the police from the driveway, breathing in sharp, frozen gasps. An officer arrived 10 minutes later. Longest 10 minutes of my life. He went inside with his flashlight and gun drawn. Minutes passed, then 5, then 7. My gut clenched. Finally, he emerged dragging a bloodied man in handcuffs. The officer said he found him hiding inside the hallway closet. Said the man had jumped him and they'd struggled. The guy was around 45, scruffy, wild-eyed, with a blank stare that didn't blink. He didn't say a word, not even when they shoved him into the cruiser. The officer looked me in the eye and said, "You did the right thing getting out when you did." I never found out who he was or what he wanted, but I can't help thinking, he'd been watching me for days, maybe longer. And if I hadn't noticed that window latch, I might not have woken up at all. It was late October when I decided to take a solo weekend trip to clear my head. Grad school had been brutal lately, and I needed space. I found a cheap Airbnb listing for a small lakeside cabin, about 3 hours north of the city. The reviews were decent, the photos looked peaceful, and the price was a steal, too good to pass up. I arrived on a quiet Sunday, just before dusk. The drive through winding forest roads was beautiful but unsettling trees, thick on either side. No other cars, and no cell service for the final 20 minutes. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the air was still and cold. The cabin was tucked against the edge of a dense tree line, with a view of the lake just beyond. No neighbors, nada. No streetlights, just me and silence. As I got out of the car and grabbed my duffel, I paused. The whole place felt off. Not wrong exactly. Just too quiet. Not a single bird, no wind, nothing but the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. Inside, the cabin was modest and rustic. One bedroom, a small living space, and a creaky wooden floor. I unpacked, made some tea, and settled into bed with a movie on my laptop. I had no plans that night, just to rest. Around 9 p.m., as the movie played softly in the background, I heard it knocking. Slow, deliberate, heavy knocks on the front door. At first, I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't spoken to the host since booking, and there had been no messages, no calls. I muted the laptop and waited. 3 more knocks, louder this time. I tiptoed to the front window and peeked through the curtain. A man stood on the porch. He looked to be in his 30s, wearing a black winter beanie and a faded red flannel. His face was partially shadowed, but his posture was strange, tense, expectant. I checked my phone. No signal, no messages, no missed calls from the host. With my heart hammering, I opened the door just a crack. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound firm. He blinked at me, then gave a crooked smile. "Oh," he mumbled, "sorry. Thought someone else was here." Then he turned and walked off down the long dirt driveway, vanishing into the trees. I stood there, stunned. Why had he come? Why knock like that, only to leave without explanation? I locked the door, checked the windows, and tried to convince myself it was a harmless mistake. Maybe he was confused. Maybe he had the wrong cabin. But I didn't sleep well that night. The next day, I spent most of it hiking the nearby trails, trying to shake the feeling that had burrowed deep in my chest. I returned to the cabin around 5 p.m. as dusk settled in again. By 7, it was pitch black outside, and the air had turned bitter. I stayed in the bedroom, bundled up, watching something light-hearted to distract myself. At exactly 9:03 p.m., the knocking returned. Same rhythm, same weight, same intensity. This time, I didn't go to the door. I crouched and looked through the peephole. It was the same man, same hat, same flannel, same blank stare. Just standing there. I cracked the door slightly. "What do you want?" I asked, voice trembling now. He blinked. "No," he said quietly. "What?" "No, not you." He turned again and walked off, disappearing into the woods just like before. My hands were shaking as I shut and locked the door. What did he mean by that? Not you? Who was he expecting? I slept with the lights on and a knife on the nightstand. That night, sometime past 2 a.m., I woke up, gasping for breath. Something had startled me, maybe a sound, maybe instinct. The cabin was completely silent, but I didn't feel alone. I got up slowly, tiptoeing down the hallway. I glanced out the side window and saw something move past a figure, darting just outside the edge of the porch light. My pulse spiked. I backed up and turned toward the front door. Another knock, harder this time, angry. I peeked again and saw not one, but 2 figures. The man in the flannel was back, but this time, someone else lingered behind him, partially obscured by the shadows. I couldn't see their face, only the outline of their body, tall and still. I backed away, heart pounding like it would burst. As I turned to grab my phone, I glanced at the back window. A face was staring back at me. A third man, eyes locked onto mine through the glass. I screamed and bolted into the bedroom, locking the door. I grabbed my phone, no signal, nothing. Footsteps began circling the cabin. Not just 2 or 3, it sounded like a group. Heavy boots thudding against the porch, the crunch of leaves and gravel all around. Knocking at the windows, trying doorknobs, testing the back door. I curled up on the floor, hands shaking, whispering to no one. I felt completely powerless. There was no one around for miles. No help, no way out. My car was boxed in by the tree-lined driveway. I couldn't leave, couldn't run. Just when I thought they might break a window, I heard a distant siren. The knocks stopped. The footsteps scattered. By the time the police arrived, the men were gone. The officers searched the cabin, checked the woods, found nothing. But he believed me. Said the door had fresh scuffs, like someone tried to force it. Said I was lucky I called lucky the landline still worked, buried in the drawer beside the couch. I had forgotten it even existed. The host arrived the next morning. He was off, not angry, but weirdly indifferent. When I told him what happened, he just shrugged and said, "Yeah, we've had some problems out here lately. Should mention that in the listing." What? I left immediately and never looked back. I still don't know who those men were or what they wanted. Maybe they were looking for someone else. Maybe they thought I was her. Or maybe they weren't looking for anyone at all. Maybe they were just hunting. I'll never know. But I haven't used Airbnb since.